Hello, this is Everett Pierce, and here's another episode of the Tree of Knowledge. The Tree of Knowledge. Now we're going to mention a word, repudiate. It is a simple refusal or to associate with a particular thing. Now, I don't know if you know, but if you do know, but if you don't know, now you do know. Now, in terms of the Supreme Court nominee and what has been done in the Senate and the House with our lovely government workers who like to drag things out, let's just say this. For those that pretending to be intelligent, I would definitely fire them, and I would plant a tree in their seat, because a tree would teach me and provide me with more knowledgeable intelligence than some of our congressmen. Now, repudiate, the refusal, or to even associate. Now, getting into intelligence and qualifications. So, even if you're qualified, does that make you would think that if you're qualified, that's enough to get the position. Most people would think that. But as we have learned with Jesus, is having a particular position and being qualified is not enough. So if you get even the ignorants have to have a say in this. So repudiants. Now, why do we have people? Is refusal. So that's what a lot of things that Trump is experiencing is basically people, regardless of what he does or says, and a lady on Fox said it perfectly, said that if Trump came forward with a cure of cancer, they would protest against that. And how true that is, which is basically what we're talking about. This tree of knowledge. Now, the forbidden tree of good and evil. This goes back to essentially Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve. What do you say? Adam is Republican and Eve is Democrat for the sake of teaching. It is not intended to be derogatory or insulting. But then again, we got people out there that everything is an insult to them. And it's because they want to be insulted. So if you want to be insulted, you will be insulted or offended. So, now let's go back to there. If Eve was to flat out repudiate Adam, well, the normal response to that would be is to find out why. Because if they don't procreate, then the increase of population would not grow, and basically the two of them will die. So he would take the time to understand as to why she is flat out repudiate. Okay, now how would I extract this out of this tree? Okay, so I say, I'm talking to the tree and I say, would you please come over here so I can talk to you without screaming at you? And the tree says, hell no. Are you a freaking idiot? Can't you see I can't move? It's not that I don't want to move, but I can't move. So you got to come to me. Okay, so repute is, now you have to look at, is it because they don't want to, just flat out want to, because a refusal means they're deadlocked into a one-way street. And as you know, that with male and females, it can't be a one-way street. You can't just have males and you can't just have females. You have to have both. So that tells me what this tree is, it can't because it physically can't. Now, when I look at our congressmen, our Democrats, and especially the radicalized Democrats, that's just flat out ignorance. Flat out ignorance. There's no other way of saying it. So, getting back to Adam and Eve, so if So the most logic is to find out why. Why is she refusing? Flat out refusal or to associate anything with sex to procreate and to bring about more human race. Now, that will be the third element's perspective of approaching it. Okay, now, I'm going to give you a Republican perspective and a Democrat perspective. Now we have a legitimate issue. A legitimate issue, meaning the balance of the human race lies in the refusal of Eve. Now, the Republican would say, wait a minute, I know these berries back here, they put me to sleep like it's a Valium. But the Democrat's saying, wait a minute, I'll just rape her. You know, it's for the better good of mankind, and she'll just have to get over it. Okay. And then, of course, the Republican, you know, when he does that and she wakes up and she has her belly big and she's pregnant, then he would say, well, you know, it must have been God that blessed you. So we'll call you the Virgin Eve. So it's just a teaching perspective, analogy, parable. So no one was harmed in this making of this video. The tree wasn't harmed other than it's going through a haircut. So I'm the hairstylist. So repudiate. Why is that? Why do we have people that is just flat out? It's interesting because when you look at these individuals, especially in our government, in the House and the Senate, is they know how to function with their body. So there are many things about them that is a two-factor in their life. So basically it comes down to they see life in one way and one way only. But what I think is interesting with that type of concept is that's what Hitler thought too. It was his way or the highway. And it was interesting because it is a historical in man's timeline for Democrats to be reverse psychology. They blame the other for the very thing that they're guilty of. So that's nothing new in that respect. So the tree of knowledge. So repudiate is, okay, so now, once you establish intent, okay, now if this tree was mobile, as we all know in terms of energy logic, an exception to the laws of energy, it would have to engage in accepting the laws of energy to deroot itself and move over here to me. So, simply having a tree, the tree of knowledge, you give me a word, you give me a situation, and I can use this tree to teach you. Because the true book of God is all around you. And I'm just using a tree. And a tree was used in Genesis, the forbidden tree of good and evil. Means positive and negative. And of each one is broken into two parts. It's either that positive is constructive or destructive. Or the negative is also constructive or destructive. So that's why they've been talking about the nuclear options. As the third element would do, like myself, is I would spend some time with Eve and I would ask her and I would be patient with her. Down to the very end that I know that if we don't do something, that life as you know it would not exist here. So, but a third element would say, wait a minute, God created me, God created her, so if we end up dying, then God would just recreate me, and I would suggest that God would recreate her, that she doesn't headstrong into repudiate, and she's not so strong in her emotions, and she understands the logic and reasoning, And that for us to survive, or self-preservation, that involves it's to get along, to procreate. So even down to the very second, from a third element perspective, I would say, I'm not even going to the extent, even though I'm highly justified. And that's what I see with the Democrats, especially the radicalized Democrats. They have something that is very legitimate, just like we're talking here with Eve, and I could use it the other way around. Adam refused to do with Eve. So it's not that I'm being gender biased. So the third element, the Republican would say, wait a minute, I would turn this into a divinity thing. I'll put her to sleep, do what I got to do, and then she ends up being pregnant. And hopefully maybe from that pregnancy, it gets her out of that mode. And then she's not into her emotions. She thinks she's been blessed and divine by God himself. And then the Democrat would say, wait a minute, I'm justified here. And if she doesn't want to procreate, then hell, I'll just rape her. So you can take something that is a legitimate situation and justify. But if you're using intelligence, especially higher intelligence, you would, even with me being the third element, say, wait a minute, if this child is born, and is born without the two factor, the two means she wanted it, I wanted it, it was born out of love and care and what we're going to do for it in terms of nurturing it, I'd rather have it that way. Because technically raping would either be a male raping a woman or a woman raping a man. And actually that's kind of funny. I hope you're laughing. Because it's kind of like double standards. It's like, God, I wish I could be raped. And it's like, then again, you can't rape the willing. But rape is a serious situation. So there's really no justification for it. Other than, we have people out there, like the Democrats, the radicalized Democrats, that just want to push their way through and do what they have the one-track mind. And then they hide behind this banner for the good of our country, blah, 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 blah. It's like the other day on Carson, he was with his person he was interviewing with. And it was like, well, I wrote a book and this, and I wrote it. I don't care if you got what initials in front of your name or what book you wrote. And it's like, you're just beginning to understand what intelligence is. Just beginning. And you're going to throw around, your credentials as if, your word is more superior or next to God. Yeah, you're lucky if I don't slap you. Because I don't even do that. Now, if we got an issue, I'm going to display and bring forth my intelligence as to why I have these certain credentials. But I don't put my credentials forward and say, hey, well, because of this and this, you must believe me. No, I put my skill sets forward and I let you experience how I resolve things, how I problem solve things, how I'm able to take the tree of knowledge. A simple tree. So if I'm the president, and you're in my house, you're in my Senate, and you're representing the people, it'd be no hard feelings. I would escort you out of the building, and I will put a pot and I would plant a tree right there where you sit. Because I will get more from that tree than I am getting out of them. And that's what's happened over 44 presidents. And of course, I was President George Washington, and I was President Abraham Lincoln. So, at least of the past 42 presidents. So part of that is accountability, and some of it isn't part of accountability. Is whoever can be prepared totally to be in a position to guide 300 million people. And essentially you're guiding 7 billion people because it is United Nations we stand. So I put a video up earlier, and it's basically the end of knowledge, or the end of intelligence. So essentially yesterday I got the last confirmation of is to stop what I'm doing. The foundational elements of energy is, like Kenny Rogers, you got to know when to hold them, know when to fold them. Is I get the red light, and I know more times than not, if I continue on, it just ends up being a detriment to me. And then when I think of 90% or higher of the people out there, 7 billion people, is majority of them don't even know who I am or I even exist. And then we'll just say if my emails and my Facebook and my YouTube wasn't being interfered with, is people too wrapped up in their routines of things to even know who I am. So now it would make sense as to why a man named Jesus would say, when I return, I'll be like a thief in the night. Meaning you'll be so preoccupied in yourself, in your environment, in your routines, you won't even recognize me. You won't even know it's me. So now when you put that perspective to evolution, as to why I would have said that 2017 years ago. So, if I'm the president, I am the leader of leaders, president of presidents, general of generals, teachers of teachers. So, if I ask you to leave the building, you can guarantee, and I have done this before, I will plant a tree right on that same piece of chair, wooden chair that you sit on, and I'll see what the tree has to say in regards to our nation. Because as I've illustrated, I'm just in the introductory, the basics, real basics. I haven't really broken into. That's why in the first Genesis, we used the snake, we used the tree, Adam and Eve, good and evil, and the rib bone. Why the rib bone and not the man's sperm and the woman's egg? Because early evolution, people struggle with the things they cannot see. Seen energy and unseen energy. So, in reference to the rib, is basically the human race is identified by your very own bones. Your bones. So if you have a museum and you got the T-Rex up there, you got a snake in there, and you got a chimpanzee, you can identify them by name because of the shape of their bones. The white in our American flag is not for some white supremacist or white power. It's for the white of your bones. And if you haven't noticed, from dust you come, and to dust you return. You're of the brown, if anything, the brown race, 50 million shades of brown. And what is left over, which we have learned with the dinosaurs, is your bones. White bones. If you clean them up, they should be as white as your teeth. Now, unless, we don't normally take our bones and do what we do to our teeth. But if we did, our bones would be as white as some Hollywood's teeth. And that's why white is in our American flag. So, many things are brought up. So this is not to be derogatory. This is not intended to be offensive. But when you got someone flat out refusal, don't want to be associated. Now, I can understand if they're in a position where they got to lay next to 10 pounds worth of cow crap and they just flat out refuse. Hell no, I don't. But when you have someone highly qualified, Supreme Court Justice and Donald Trump's cabinet members, as we have learned 2017 years ago, me, a man of high quality and qualifications, instead of put me in the right position, they tortured me and tried to kill me. So having the right credentials, or being, that's the sole concern you hear in the Congress. We don't know if he's able to take on the job of our Congress. It's like, stop giving this false sense of concern. It's about one track and one track only. So it's sickening. It really is. And to see that's happening in my White House, in my Congress, my Senate, amongst the people out there. No wonder people are pissed off. The thing is, you keep pissing off people, good Samaritans who have firearms, who have grenades, who have underground bunkers. They're going to finally say, F it. And they're just going to take back what is all of ours. Instead of a bunch of idiots in there thinking that they have this entitlement. You know, you earn entitlement. You know, what are some good examples? Let's see, Sandra Bullock. There's Denzel Washington with the movie Fence and about 1 billion other movies he's done. Tom Hanks, Mike Tyson, President Donald Trump, Everett Pierce. So there's a lot of people who has made many times over earning the element of entitlement. And even Jesus, my previous life. So we don't have entitlement because it was gifted to us. We have entitlement because we have earned it. Our qualifications, in many, especially me, I'm overqualified. But I'd rather have someone that's overqualified than underqualified. Because in capitalism, if you're overqualified, that translates into business people. I'm going to have to pay him more for what he does. And God forbid our capitalism do such a thing as that. When our government wants to go in and see what they're doing to our American people, and then they start screaming, throwing this word sling of fascism or authoritarian. And it's because it's like, what would you know about fascism? What in the hell would you know about authoritative? You're just beginning to understand evolution. In fact, a lot of people don't even understand themselves. So with this tree of knowledge, just simply me and it and me can explain and understand repudiate. And so even though it can't move, then the reverse of that coin, just like if I show you a quarter, do you have to see the other side? No, it's like my hand. Do you have to see the back of my hand to know what the back of the hand possibly looks like? Oh my God, that took me by surprise. I didn't realize. Of course, I'm being facetious. So the opposite, that it doesn't have the ability. It does not have the physical ability. So it can be one of two things. It doesn't have the ability and it doesn't want to come to me. Or it doesn't have the ability and it does want to come to me. Okay, the other version of that, like I said, positive, negative, constructive, destructive, is it's more than capable of coming over to me. Now it comes down to that same two categories. Are they wanting to work with me, or are they just flat out refusal? Because if it doesn't list up in their list of evolution, their utopia, what they envision, their entitlement that they see for themselves, they're going to just flat out refuse. Well, we have a protocol for that. So, anyways, we'll end it right there. I appreciate your time, but we had to cover this. And like I had said before, the end of intelligence. I have the red light. I had the last confirmation. And basically anything more that I would put out, it would be a waste of my time anyways. So, you have a handful of people out there to even know that I exist. So, it's like it goes back to biblical. You reap what you sow. And you reap the fruits of your labor. Now you have to think about, to all the things you have done, what kind of fruits is going to be part of your labor? What kind of things are you going to reap? In terms of what you get to experience. What if you come up and you see a 6-foot hole dig into the ground and God says, well, reap what you sow. Here's the fruits of your labor. And speaking of fruits of my labor, this is not my house, but is a good friend of mine named Eve, which goes back to the beginning of Genesis, by the way. And as you can see here, we have a lot of good fruits. So when you say the fruits of my labor, are you going to be able to pluck a nice juicy lemon or orange? Or are you going to, will you find something that's been rotten and it's got worms crawling and growing and living inside it? So that's the real question at hand. The fruits of your labor. What is your fruits of your labor? That's when we take a moment to ourselves and you find out, you start looking at your fruit and you say, oh shoot, looks like I didn't do too well. And then many are going to find stuff like this. You're going to say, damn. And then what they're going to do is, which is quite typical, is they're going to take their fruit and put it in your basket, and they're going to take one of yours. The Democrats are known for that. Not just the Democrats, but the radicalized Democrats. The ones that live by this entitlement that is just a gifted thing. And like Sean Spicer had said, you know, it's not a God-given right to be in America. It's a privilege. That means people who love the concept, that's essentially what America is, an evolutionary concept of multiple religions coming together, multiple cultures coming together in unity, utilizing the constitution of things and not the exaggeration of it. Because you may or may not know, okay, but there's three parts to that Constitution. It is the Constitution of the United States. Part 2 is the balls law. And part 3 is the vagina law. Now I could use another word that starts with P, but some people would be offended. So we just call it the vagina law. So the three parts that our nation, and we have to start somewhere. So you start with just basic stuff. So the Constitution is essentially your wooden ABC blocks. And we all know what that is, because especially older generations like me, 48 years old, because we had wooden blocks, ABC blocks, to teach us our alphabet. Now I'm not sure what is out there today's time, but they're, you know, more advanced, you know, electronic toys and everything else. But the Constitution to the United States, which is one of three parts, and that's why on the back of the $1 bill you see the reference to a 1-3 factor, 13 arrows, 13 leaves, the eagle, Baltic eagle. The initials is BE. It's holding leaves, B leaf. Arrows associated with Native Americans. A native belief. I am the native belief. I have inalienable rights. People who are under the Constitution have unalienable rights. And why is that? Because people are still developing themselves. They're still acclimating to the Constitution. And that has to be in place first. First, before Ball's law is implemented in the vagina law. And that may sound crazy or ludicrous, and I hope you're laughing, but there's much truth to the other two concepts, because it will be your salvation, and it will bring technology that will surpass what's here today, like it's caveman tool, being able to open up subspace and go 100,000 light years in a second, to eliminate cancer, to eliminate a lot of health issues, where now the hospitals are now a training camp to teach people CPR, to teach people, because no one's getting hurt, not near as much, or being born with missing arms, with St. Joe's. And so, you know, the question comes to, and we'll end it right here, is you have two choices. Is either 4.5 billion in the future, or to do 4.5 billion years over again. So I have the red light. So now I must prepare to downsize my stuff, basically get rid of stuff I don't really need, stuff that I want to take with me, and not waste any more time on video that people are not, you know, high 90% of the people out there don't even know I exist. And that would explain why the term of being back like a thief in the night. So, if you haven't donated to the Shriners Hospital, that's always a good idea. You know, at least provide them with the tools so they can try to maintain a certain level of functionality. Or St. Jude, which is Eve's. Eve, that's her primary, and of course Shriners Hospital is her secondary, and me with the reverse. So, I'm at Eve's house. And I'm trimming trees here. And we have lots of them. So, we're coming down to a conclusion here of how trees of knowledge, and of course we had a couple cold spells, so as you can see, some of our trees took a hit, but they always grow back. Because that element within my energy, I have the healing properties. And it's within my energy, within my spirit, and then it's also within my DNA, which people are still trying to figure out. So, the tree of knowledge, and that's, if you don't know what this tree is, it's called an Italian cypress. If you don't know what that is, that's what they call a rose that's been there for a while. And we've done video on the evolutional path, the stones, the pavers. So everything in my environment, even a doormat. Some of the women out there feel wholeheartedly that men are treating them like a doormat. So there's a doormat of the positive and negative, so we can even have a video on that. But my teachings are coming to an end. So with that, I do wish you all great good luck in your endeavors as I move on to my own transition. And so hopefully maybe one day we'll meet up again in 4.5 billion years. With that, this is Everett Pierce on this February the 2nd, 2017. Thank you for your time, and Godspeed.